Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to our final installment of the Indigo Frequency. My name's Lisa Gunshore. We're here joined by the incredible author and expert on indigos, Denise Dryden. Welcome back, Denise.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. This is exciting. It's a little emotional too, because it's our last one, and we've been having so much fun talking about this. This is our number 8 and final.
Yeah.
So, yes, thank you.
Oh my gosh. And I do have to say that music with these fancy beats, I'm telling you, that was some serious bass. I wish everybody had cool headphones to hear our intro because it's really great.
It sounds wonderful. I love what you know how to do. I'm a baby boomer. I just look at you with my mouth open like, how does she do all of that?
I don't know, but I love it very much. So it's all good. Oh my gosh. So here we are. We're in our final episode of the Indigo Frequency, exploring the Indigo Frequency. And in today's episode, we have decided to talk about being a parent to indigo children, because we spent so much time on us as indigos and what we're here to do and what our mission is. And now it's about what do we do as parents for our indigo children. And I don't know, where do you want to start, Denise? Where should we start today?
Well, first, I just want to really appreciate the young, energetic child in and around you who's just like so excited that
he really is
on screen at this point. It's pretty fun.
It's like Ludwig isn't here to bark, so now I have a little kid.
Now you have a little one. It's perfect. It's perfect. So I think what we want to do first is that we've talked about being an indigo. We've talked about the characteristics of what indigos present as. What I want to do first is talk about what's it like when we step into parenting, because it means now that we're not in our own story as much as we're in our own story and holding for 1, 2, 3, however many kids you have, right? And you might be in a partnership, you might have children, you might be doing traditional, non-traditional relationships, and all of that. You know, I like, that's how I got into parent coaching from the very beginning, because you have a full project just taking care of yourself, and then you start adding a relationship, a child, enrolls in the community, enrolls with your family, and it's a pretty exhausting job. So what I would like to do is talk about what's it like when we take that indigo energy into parenting first, and then what I thought we could do after that is really go into some of the characteristics of what an indigo child looks like. So we're going to do indigo parent, and then go, like, what if you're not an indigo parent and you want to know, hey, am I raising an indigo child? So we have a punch list of what characteristics we can look for, and then we'll sort of blend them together. How does that sound?
I love it, and I'm very interested because, of course, I'm a step parent to 4 kids, and I would really love to hear how I, as an indigo, can use my gifts and talents to help them. So I'm excited to dive in.
Yeah, well, here we go. Okay, so I think the first thing that we want to keep in mind is that, when we go through some of the punch lists of what the very most basic stuff, is that we want to address, is that we're here to change old conditioned patterns. And we came into family systems and lineages that were toxic, that were dirty, that were dysfunctional. I love that word. They were so highly dysfunctional that they needed somebody to come in and rooter and clean it all out and sort of sparkle it up and make it look good. So that means that our skill sets are going to have a lot of looking back at the history of our family, and our job is to not replicate that, even though that's all we know.
Mm-hmm.
So when we unpack that, it's kind of like, oh, shoot. So I have all of these life experiences and these patterns and conditions that have been set within me, and I have to separate myself from those when I go into parenthood, or at least, let's be honest, be aware that they're there.
Yeah.
You can't necessarily take them off and go, done. What we can say is, like, what if they're there, and they're there in a much larger capacity than anything we ever thought?
Yeah.
That means that we hold those conditions that were really set in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s in our culture of what's it like to, what's a role, what's a gender role? What is it, the value of education, the value of religion, the role of mother, the role of father. Those are the conditioned things we're talking about, is all of those that we were imprinted with, that we read in our books. Every child's book we read, fairy tale or school assignment, has a role of what an American or what a good citizen or what a good husband or wife looks like, or what a good parent-child story is. And those are conditioned falsehoods.
Yeah, well, and the fairy tales, every single one of them, you're missing a parent usually, or you lose a parent in the fairy tale. So there's a lot of that, especially I think for the Gen X. Like, I feel like as Gen X, like right at the beginning, Bambi itself, like watching that movie was so traumatic. Like, it was awful. He like loses his mom right away. And like, so that conditioning of like losing a parent, and then we also are the generation that started to see a lot of divorce. I feel like that really affects us as a generation, and I would imagine the Indigos as well.
And look at where the conditioning has started. If you really look at every Disney cartoon, it has taken something and added an additional piece of trauma. So this, first thing is that we hold the constructs of these conditionings in our system. The second thing is that we're going to have trauma from those. And trauma basically is a nervous system response to something that gets really close to a memory or a smell or a taste or something that reminds us that that's there, and then it holds and it kind of comes back up. And in the Indigo Assignment, part 6, which is where I really talk about children and parenting and whatnot, I used a no-show Zen card of like, you got just this nothing but buttons, hot red buttons all over you, and all these imaginary stories. And so someone comes up and goes boop, and you're like, what? And so we're already like that before we even start parenting, and we've got kids that are going to push those buttons.
Oh, it's so true. And I'm going to just take a moment to say hi to everybody who's joining. Welcome in, Barbarella. You're not late. It's okay. You're always right on time when you're supposed to be here. Marilyn, you're a new member, and I love you, and I know who you are. And she is in Laguna Woods, California. I love this. Chai Moments made it. And Marilyn.
That's Tony from Chi Moments, who designed the book.
Oh, Chi Moments. Oh, I love that. Marilyn says, I believe I am the mother, possibly an indigo, of 8 indigo children, plus nieces and nephews. Michelle's here too. So welcome in, everybody, and make sure you throw in your questions. This is our final installment, so please throw those questions in. We're going to do a Q&A at the end. Okay, now back to it. Back to our button pushing.
So it makes sense to me that we've got kids pushing our buttons, and we've got relationships pushing our buttons. We've got mothers and fathers who are saying, I wouldn't do it this way. Kids saying, you're not paying attention. Spouse saying, my family system is this way and your family system is that way. So our buttons for trauma are being pushed all the time. So it makes sense that beyond the trauma responses, that we're gonna have a little bit more of an additional challenge, because our job is to face them and break them, or face them and put them in their place. And if we don't know that that's our job, we don't know why they keep coming up all the time. Back in our face. So it's almost like the conveyor belt, or the repetitive loop of one instance after another, until you go, what's the common denominator here? It's me. And I have something I need to go harvest, go mine, go pull up and go, oh, so you've been in there the whole time, and now we have to sort of include you in decision making, because that's part of who I am.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Totally makes sense.
So if we have these deep responses, and our job is to to feel them, to see them, then bring them into consciousness, and to recognize where we're turning ourselves into, and I love the term compensatory parents. which is what happens when we have these pains and we have these memories and we have these neglects and we have these traumas, and we're trying to save our children from having any of those. So the compensatory parent, that's where we came up with the term. And I did an entire video on this 3 weeks ago. So it's a 3-part. It's helicopter parenting, how to stop helicopter parenting, and how come narcissism and helicopter parenting are sort of all fit in there together. So you can go back on YouTube and go find that, so we don't have to unpack all of that. But I think the bottom line is that we start clearing and making our children more comfortable, making our children more, what's the word I want to say? We start helping our children so much that they rely on our help.
Well, yeah, we become codependent. I mean, that's really what happens, right?
Yeah. And what I talk about in the video is that not only are we creating codependence, but we are creating quantum entanglement, which means that we're taking our quantum perceptions and fields, and then we're placing them into the field of our child. And so now we have 2 interlocked fields, or in Marilyn's case, 8 interlocked fields, right?
Yeah.
And then our children are trying to do life, but they know that if they get lost or they're confused, they can lean into us, and we're gonna be part of their field, and we're gonna solve the problem for them, which is awesome when they're 4 or 5. Not so great when they're 13 or 14, as we talked about in a previous episode, and really awful when they're 25 and they don't know how to manage their own field. So we have quantum entangled ourselves into our children, into our relationships, because we're compensating for what we're feeling and what we're here to address.
Yikes. Yeah.
It makes it kind of complicated. And so what I love about the Gen X, because that's really where the indigos are seated, is that we seem to know that, and at the same time sort of not know what to do with that. Many tools, and there's not a lot written about fields and quantum entanglement between parent and child, and what's it like to solve or address your own lineage parent-child relationship with your parents and with your parents' parents, and all of those pieces that you're here to change, right?
Well, yeah, it's interesting because, they talk about, healing 7 generations back and 7 generations forward. And what I find interesting is most of us indigo adults who are parents, we're in this process of healing our own patterns. And in healing those patterns, like you said, you're healing your children's patterns, but we're also working through stuff with our parents. So at the same time, it's like you're working both directions at the same time, which is good that we're masters with skills, because otherwise that would be difficult to do. It's difficult to do anyways.
Well, in what we know from the previous shows is that my background is working with families that have a child that's sort of dangling and not doing well, right? So that that they are therapeutically placed in wilderness or outside the home. What I find challenging is when I'm talking to a parent about this entanglement, without using the term entanglement, but this pattern, this relationship. What I notice is that Gen X parent is so interested in helping the child. But then when I say, so where did it come from? And why are you doing that? They're like, I don't want to talk to you right now. So what we want to do is we want to open the flow, so that what goes through us down to our children comes up through us and goes to our mom or our grandmother or grandfather, right? So that we can see that it ripples 2 or 3 in each direction and start to play in that field rather than just the mother-daughter or the child. And expanding that is where we find the freedom as a parent, as an indigo parent, is to realize, hey, this is showing up because it's 4 or 5 deep on even, with me 2 down, 2 up, and I'm going to play in this area. Okay. So, do we have any questions before we move on about like what the indigo parent might look like in their parenting challenges? They're also super creative. They're also super intuitive. I was just sort of focusing on the challenges, but let's really look at the fact that they're abundant. They can create abundance. They're great manifestors. They have a lot of intuition and psychic skills, so they can figure things out and stay a step ahead. So we want to start bringing all that into a playful, and I like the image that's behind us, Lisa, with
Mm-hmm.
the indigo circle, and sort of say, let's make that our field. Is, you know, parents and grandparents and children and grandchildren and all of my skill sets, and how do I play in that field really nicely.
Yeah, I like it.
I
I
like it
like
a
it.
lot. So, any questions from those of you who are watching about what an indigo parent would be? So you could see if, hey, am I one of those parents? Does this sound familiar to me? Is this what I need? Or is there anything you want to ask? Because we do have people sort of typing in. So I want to make sure I
Yeah.
ask that before we move on.
Yep, I think that's good. Definitely throw your questions in, guys, if you have them. And honestly, if you're watching this later on the replay or listening on audio, pop your questions either onto either of our YouTube channels or on our social media, because Denise is going to, this is her work, and she's going to continue to gather data and share her expertise, you know, through the questions that you're asking as well.
Well, and we keep growing information. You know, some of this is in the book, some of this is not in the book, because it wasn't something that we were aware of. I was even thinking of when I wrote the book, right?
Yeah.
So, you know,
Yeah.
I go through 5 whole sections before I get to parenting, because parenting is kind of like it's what you take into the future. And so how do we address it and go like, hey, I think I have a little bit more responsibility to me than I thought I did. And so that self-care, that self-knowledge, that ability to sort of know that field again, that beautiful pink glowing field in front of the screen is important to follow. So that makes sense to me. Okay, so if we don't have any questions on that, what do you want to do next? Do we want to go to the indigo child characteristics so we can start to say what happens? How do you know you have an indigo child?
Yeah, I'm looking at the notes to make sure we don't miss anything.
I'm just
There's
going down.
well there yeah, well there's, you know, I want to go back to, because I'm reading this on the paper, you know, about straddling the old pains and pressures with the opportunity to be energetically free. And something that's come up for me, and it's even more complex because I'm a step parent, right? So now I'm in a place where I really don't have control, right? And that is a challenge in and of itself. But taking that out of it, okay, one of the things that I've noticed is my desire to challenge authority and systems at school. So I feel like I often step into an advocate role for the kids around certain processes, systems that I don't think, they're either outdated or maybe they're not supporting. You know,
Yes.
three of the 4 kids are in gifted and talented, right? They think differently, they act differently. And so I just want to go back to that, because the being free of systems is so important. And here we are, these system busters, and then we have kids who we put in a system.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious, like, what are your thoughts on that? How do we as parents maneuver our desire to break free of the system, and yet maybe aren't in a position? I know a lot of indigo parents that are homeschooling and doing things outside, but some of us are still in that system. And what does that look like? I mean, that just jumps out to me as something we want to talk about.
I think it's great. I love that you looped back and found that one little place where we could expand it, which is, how do you advocate for what you perceive your child is struggling with, and do you want to help and alleviate the struggle that they're having? Do we want to empower how they address the challenge themselves, or do we want to stand back and say, it looks like you're doing this, this, and this, and I see you doing that? So it's either helping, advocating, or witnessing. And which one is most helpful as an indigo parent, especially when we're dismantling?
Mm-hmm.
And we're used to busting down systems. We're the ones who busted the principal's office. We're the ones who made, you know, who brought out all of the changes that our children are now addressing in school. We're the ones who now have IEP, individual education plans. We're the ones who have behavioral agreements at school. You know, these are the things that they had to create because of us, right?
Right. It's
And
true.
we also created really unique preschools, daycares, preschools, early childhood, you know, kindergarten, first and second and third, an enormous amount of support into alternative schools and creating magnet schools, creating charter schools, creating homeschooling programs. And when COVID hit, what we know is that it really brought in what's part of the school is working and what part isn't, and then what's role. Because the first thing I want to do is pull that sword out and go in and go, are you kidding me? This doesn't work. And that may not be the best thing we can do for our child. So if we look at it from the 3 points, go fight for them and clear the way, the snowplow, the helicopter, the responsible parent. It's a fine line in there. You saw something, you need to go in and address it. And to maybe that's where we go internal and we go, is this my reaction? Or is this really seriously something that they are stuck with and they've asked for help? And to know the difference, and to muscle test, like, oh no, this is me getting totally wrapped up in their pain and wanting to prevent them from their pain, right? Yeah. So you're fighting their battles for them. The second one is to advocate, which is, it looks like I'm noticing and I wonder, what's going on? Like your grades are blah, blah, blah. And then you have this one teacher and your grades are really low with this teacher. What would be the reason for that? Like, could you help me understand this? And that's where we go to our Claires and go, I'm noticing that you don't talk about that teacher. I'm noticing that you're sad when you have to do that kind of homework. So can you tell me what's working in school and what's not working? And is there something that you need me to help you out with? So we advocate, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. And as a step parent, you've got mom on the paperwork, you've got dad on the paperwork, and you've got stepmom on the paperwork. You're like 3 out of 3, not the first or the second. So it's kind of like, what can I really actually do other than advocate for this child that I love, which is I noticed. So I have 2 clients right now that are 16 and 17. And I've got agreements from their parents to help them with high levels of sensitivity and energetic reading and reactivity in school. And we meet once a week, sometimes for just half an hour, sometimes for a full hour. And we learn how to flush out the Claires, which is, what are you seeing? What are you noticing? What am I seeing? What am I noticing? And how do we have a dialogue about what you're experiencing without me jumping in and helping you, because I'm just your coach, right? So what tools, what can you do, and what's comfortable, what's uncomfortable. So we become their advocate, which is how it works out. If you need help scripting something, practicing on me, but ultimately you're going to have to go in and take care of this, or you're going to have to talk to mom and dad and get them to help you. So I'm just going to be your advocate. And then the third one is just to be a witness, which is probably the most powerful thing we can do when our kids start to right themselves. We can't witness when they're drowning, right? But when they are starting to right themselves, to empower a child, to empower ourselves as a non-quantum field entangler, right? What we do is we start to collect data on what we see. So let's just say that you're talking about one of your stepchildren, and you start to notice the days that they're happy, when they go get their homework, what's working, what's not working, right? And you notice the things, and then you start to collect them, and then you say something in an a very empowerment-based statement, which is, and I'm going to pretend like you're my stepchild, right, Lisa?
Okay, I like it.
Wow, Lisa, I noticed that, almost every afternoon this week, you get your homework out and you are on it. And sometimes you're tapping and whistling and you're just getting it done. And it's just beautiful to watch. How's that feel? And so what we do is we notice what they're doing, and we use specifics, not like, hey, go, 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 you're doing good. But what is it that I actually saw you doing? And then saying what it might have felt like for you just to see that. Like, it made me smile watching you tap your foot, or it was fun to watch you move and do your math shoulders, to the music. And, then you hand it back to them to own. What was that like? wow, that's amazing. What does it feel like? And so that empowerment statement is what we do when we witness. We just keep lobbing these beautiful things that we notice over them so that they can sit up a little taller and go, it's really not as hard as I thought it was going to be in school. But if no one's doing that, then that's the role that you can do as the parent, which is, I'm smart. I absolutely know how to collect information and empower somebody. So I'm going to empower the hell out of these kids.
Yeah. Yeah. I like it.
Yeah.
So last night, I bring this up because I know we're going to segue into the kids. And last night, my little Sadie Jewel, she's the youngest of the 4 kids, and she's absolutely, well, I think she might be rainbow, but I bring this up because she's a little bit of indigo. And hi, Leslie, welcome to the show from Huntington Beach, California. So we got quite a few California peeps on here. So last night, I drove all day after school, drove kids to different activities and tryouts and things were going on. And so I mentioned to the kids that I'd been driving for 2.5 hours because that's how long I was driving. Okay, so then cut to later in the evening, we're having dinner. And I made a comment to my husband. I said, I drove like 3 hours today. And Sadie looks at me and she goes, no, you drove 2.5 hours. That's what you said. And that's the time that you drove. And it was really funny because she was like calling me out. And she does that a lot, by the way. And so it segues into these children who are truth seekers. I know. They're little truth seekers and they don't mess around. And I have another great example of this with Brenna, who's the middle daughter. Same thing. We were going to school and I said, well, we'll be there in about 10 minutes. And she's like, well, my map says 8 minutes. It will be 8 minutes. So there's this like intensity of like being exactly right and no moving the needle at all. There's no like approximation with these kids. No. And it's especially with those 2 little girls. So I share that to segue into like these indigo kids who want truth, who aren't going to take any BS from anyone.
Well, our entire frequency is truth-based, right? And the hardest thing for us to do is first, without a show like this and a book like this and discussions, was like, oh, that's what I keep bumping up against all the time is I have this energy coming out of me that affects people around me, and I have to hold for the truth. And as a parent, your bottom line depends on your relationship with the truth. So if you're an exaggerator, if you are a minimalizer or a denier, if you are someone who gets really uncomfortable when things are fighting and you have to get up and leave, these kids are just going to keep noticing that you can't stay when the truth shows up. Mm-hmm. And they also hold the truth, but they hold it in a different way. So first, ultimately, you put your finger right on it, Lisa. Our relationship with the truth is ours, and we are always being called to develop that. So my story is that I don't lie. I never lie. I don't say, hey, I didn't do that or anything. However, when if this is good, then more is better. I am an exaggerator. So if I caught a 10-inch trout, by the time I've told the story, it's now 12 or 14 inches because it's like and it was so good. And my kids would just roll their eyes like, and I realized I can't continue like this. And so I was 45 going like, every time I exaggerate, I lose my credibility, and I have to have rock solid credibility in everything I do. So I had to reel in the exaggerating, and I had to unreel the victim who was reacting. And those two, well, it was a full-time job. But realizing that is my role, because if I'm not holding truth at all times, I can't talk to people about truth and what it really takes.
Well, yeah, and I'd like to spiral into the exaggerating even deeper, because that was one of the biggest things with my understanding of my own codependency was also the exaggerating and the realization. And this is a profound thing for everybody who's listening, I think, because the realization that we exaggerate because we feel so much and we don't feel seen or heard. And so we make a big deal out of everything,
Right.
because and we expand it because we want people to experience the amount of energy we're experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a great mirror for the kids because I notice when they exaggerate. And I realize now, I mean, this is part of my own work, but now when they do, I acknowledge that I need to stop what I'm doing and really acknowledge what they're talking about, because it's important to them enough that they're expanding the truth. And like you said, with my own self, exaggerating, it does, you lose your credibility with the kids like immediately, because kids just know when you're full of crap. And
you know that you're not holding it. They don't know
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's a better way of saying it.
Well, and so like, let's use this beautiful blue light, blue marker as the truth.
Oh, I like that.
Which is super hard to find in an entire screen. Like, where's the truth? Where's the truth? Well, we can hone in on it. So what when we're talking about your condition patterns, when we're talking about your institutional training, when we're talking about what's your relationship with the truth, what really happens is we as indigos have this range. Okay, we're going to call that, this might be the exaggerating, this might be the minimalizing, this might be the placating and the codependence, because what we've learned as children and teenagers and adults is that the truth makes people really uncomfortable. So we soften it, we hide it, we layer it, we try to hide or get into the region of truth, but we don't actually hold the truth, because when you hold the truth, people are like,
yeah,
this is what happens when we're uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So knowing that we can just hold this and keep beaming on it, and then maybe, a different power or energy starts coming in, and we can start building different versions of who we are in our truth. This is what our kids need from us, which might look like at any given time when you're changing a behavior. This is what I coach with my parents is, hey, I watched Denise and Lisa on the Indigo thing and realized that I fudge on my stories constantly, and I'm learning how to do that. Now, you don't say, hey, I want you guys to like hold me accountable, because that's just another codependent behavior. What you say is, I'm going to work on this and you're going to see me acting differently. Or I'm going to catch it. Like, I'm going to tell a story and I'm going to go, wait a minute. Actually, I minimalized that because I was worried that you wouldn't like me. So I made it a little bit smaller than it was. So I'm going to change that. And the kids just go, good one. Good one. So I have a client with a 4-year-old. He was 3.5, diamond child, super aware of where mom gets lost in this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so she caught herself energetically, and she brought herself back in. And she was going to say something, and she brought herself in, and she was like inside going like, I did it. I actually harnessed it and brought it into this. And he walked up and he patted her on the leg and said, good one.
And I love that.
Oh my God, you saw that? And he's like, mm-hmm. So our children see much more, and we're patterning how to lie, how to minimalize, how to exaggerate, how to codepend, how to dodge around on the truth all the time, as opposed to just going like, here it is, it's inside of me and I can't change it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about what it's like to be working on this process yourself and have a child who's an indigo. Okay.
Yeah.
So the first thing is that we know that they're going to have something like a really high rebel in them. Let's just say they're rebel, they're questioner, they're challenger, and they're pusher. And so the rebel, we know the rebel's like, nope, not doing that. No matter how much you try to placate any of this, I'm not doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I have my own authority and I'm not going to do it. Now, the difference between the rebel and the questioner is like, I'm going to follow all the rules that make sense to me, but you show me something that's stupid and doesn't make sense, and I'm going to break it. because I can, because it's stupid and it doesn't make sense. And so as a parent, you're like, consistency. Like, why do you have a 8, 9, or 10 o'clock bedtime? Why do you have these rules if you can't figure out why they're there? But if you have a really good reason and you back it up, then they're like, okay, that makes sense to me. So I don't actually have to be asleep by 10. I just have to be in my room, bringing off screens, bringing the quiet in so that my body can start to go to sleep. And you're like, yeah. And then you take this off and they understand that they don't have to question very much, right? The challenger, we talked about this, the challenger pusher, the one who's like, are you sure? Are you sure? If I push a little bit, you will give in. You will fold. I know you will, because you're not strong in, if you get uncomfortable, you fold. So I know how to push and push and push. So that's where you get the child who will test you and go, so you said no, right? I can't go to the movies tonight. And you said, yeah, I said, absolutely said no. Well, what if I did this? What if I did this? What if I did this? So the job is to notice that they're looking for you to fold, because they know that people fold, their teachers fold, their friends fold, their friends' parents fold. So they're looking to push where the folding is going to happen. And so your job is to really have a lot of sense of humor with that. Oh, look at you. You're so cute. You just keep moving around the same answer. And I'm just going to play this over and over again. Yeah, no. Yeah, no. Nice try. No, 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 no. And then they get, okay, so mom's rock solid, dad's rock solid. This makes sense. So that you're you know, that we were like that, and this is who they are. And they have a much more intrinsic sense of the daily workings of the truth. We're trying to find the truth in a society when we were growing up that didn't know the truth. Now they live in a culture that's starting to show the truth, and they want to know how you model that to them, because you're the most important. Okay. They are warriors and protectors, and they're protectors of the three energies that are coming after them. They're protectors of the crystal, which are that sort of spectrumy, water, vibrational being that's highly intelligent. They're protectors of the rainbow, which are the spreaders and the joy bringers and the blenders. And those two are building up to they're the protector of the future, which is the diamond energy. So they have a very solid responsibility towards those that come behind them, and will always. And they may have older siblings that are crystals, rainbows, or diamonds, and they may have younger siblings, but you're going to notice that they understand them and they protect them. So there's a protector in there that you're kind of like, as a kid, how? Oh yeah, and those who have ambulatory limitations as well. Yes, I get that. Ashley just signed on and talked about those that move through the world differently, right? That those protectors are going to go after anyone who's learning how to thrive on our planet as it's expanding and growing. Does that make sense? Yeah. Again, like us, they're observant, but they are observant even stronger and faster than we are. They put things together. Like I have a 19-month-old granddaughter that watches me do something once and then turns around and has the system down. And if I do it differently, she shakes her head and goes and does it the way that I used to do it. So I don't realize that she's observing and putting constructs together really fast. So they're duplicating everything we do. When you have someone who's observing you at everything you do, I guess you have to be a little mindful of, like, am I holding it strong or weak?
Yeah. Well, you're really making me think of my littlest, Sadie Jewel, because she's absolutely got that warrior energy. But when you talk about protector and observer, like, I mean, this is a kid who's 9 years old, and she came up to me a few months ago and put a blanket on me. And I was like, what are you doing? And she goes, oh, you're cold. Like, she knew I was cold, and I didn't even think I was. I wasn't even thinking about it, but she was noticing how I was sitting, noticing that I was cold, and brought me a blanket. And she's the first one to advocate. She'll say, like, Dad, Brenna needs this. Like she's the first one to notice what people need and speak up to say, like, you're not listening to them. You're not taking care of them. You need to do this. And so that really aligns with what you're saying about the indigo. I mean, she really has those traits for sure. And I think there's always there's in most family dynamics, there's a caretaker kid, but caretaking and observing and protecting to me is a different thing than caretaking. That observing and knowing somebody's talking and they need to be heard and everybody needs to be quiet and listen. Like that's the advocacy she has for anyone in the family, even the pets.
Well, and that brings to mind that there's these big observation skills, but they're also paired with all of their clairs. The younger they are, the more their clairs are open, wide, their pineal gland, their ability to do this is wide open around to everything. And so, we're learning, hey, maybe I'm a little psychic. Maybe I have some intuitive skills. Maybe I can sense this. No, these kids are born with them wide open. And if you go here to page 103 in part 6 or in part 5, it goes through the entire list of clairs and how important they are. So it's clairaudient, claircognizant. So ability to hear, ability to see, ability to know, ability to smell, these are things that are wide open. So when they're reading you, they're observant and they're reading you like we were reading our parents and going like, what do they think they're doing? They're doing the same thing, only they're 10 times more skilled than we are. Mm-hmm. So in some ways, we're sitting ducks because if we don't know who we are, what we stand for, what our truth is, they're running circles around us, and they happen to have a lot more compassion. The younger ones have more compassion than we did towards life because they don't have as many conditioned things to be angry about as we did. Mm-hmm. We came into a very toxic, polluted lineage line and world. And as we've been dismantling it, the younger ones coming up have less of that initial, like, get this out and more like fine cleaning. And so they need you to show that you're finessing yourself in truth a lot more than others. And so they're also intuitive and they're highly sensitive. Like, I don't think there's a single indigo or new earth kid, indigo, crystal, rainbow, or diamond that isn't highly sensitive. So that sensitivity to everything is a trait that exists on any of these frequency kids. Right? And then we're sort of, let's see what Ashley has to say. And it's valuable to teach them that if they're wrong, it's okay. Beautiful. Like, how do you go? So what did you detect? What did you feel? What did you see? What did you intuitive? What did you see with your intuitive skill sets? Thank you, Ashley. That was because instead of going, you got that wrong, but what did you see and how did I miss that? And what can we do to oh, I missed that. You missed that. Now we got it. Kind of like when you're problem solving and playing a game. That's more of what this indigo child needs to do, is for you to acknowledge that they actually saw something and to give them permission to fail at, well, my gut told me, well, it told you that, yes, and there was more. So how do we develop that skill set? So their clairs are open, but it's our job to teach them how to navigate with them and become super proficient at them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we have to teach them. And that means we have to know what the hell a clair is and what it is within us so that we can teach them.
Yeah.
Or get them to people that can teach them.
Yeah.
Thank you for that one. My goodness. That was perfect. What were you going to say something, Lisa? Because I'm
just in agreement. I'm in agreement. Yeah.
Okay. So the next one is that let's go multi-dimension, multi-intelligences, multi-focus, multi-everything. What we know is that we're experiential. We can gather things from many different places. And then we're just slowly learning, me at 63, most Gen Xers, right? Or most indigos, 40, 45 and unders are starting to go, wow, so this is what I actually know how to do. These are some of my intelligences. These are some of my skill sets. Imagine being younger and coming into a world that has less of the matrix, less constriction, less dominant control over those intelligences. So those intelligences are even bigger. So what we have the opportunity to do is go, I don't know a lot about intelligences. Can you teach me what you're seeing? How you're putting things together? Maybe help me mind map. Like you went from here, 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 and you came up with an answer. I usually go here and here, but how did you do that? So we ask them questions, not to control them, but because they're fascinating and they have something to teach us. How did you do that? Wow, how did you just do that? Right? And notice that almost straight across the board, this title of ADHD, ADD, it used to be ADD, then it was ADHD, and now to me it's just multi-intelligences, because the focus part doesn't make sense to me. There's either times when the focus is completely there and you cannot break it, whether it's a video game, whether it's an Instagram, following that they're doing and posting, or tracking lyrics of a song. There's no attention issue, right? Or when they're in a classroom where a teacher's going very succinctly through old-fashioned executive functioning skill set building, that they're just like, yawn, get me out of here. And then they're bouncing all over the place and their intelligences are moving. So sort of have curiosity about not labeling at all what you're seeing, but getting curious about what else there is as well. Okay. Ashley, thank you, Ashley. Ashley's just on a roll here.
I know, I see that. I love these comments and questions.
Well, Ashley and I talk about this all the time, and she's got the most magical children and magical parenting skills. So I love that she's got this input. Ask them telepathically too, because what we notice is that with these, when the clairs are open, you can sort of sit and look at them and smile and just send this, like, what is it that I'm missing? Can you teach me? Can you share with me more? And ask them, so that they can interact with you, and then watch what shows up in your head. Like, I never hear a voice. I don't have somebody who comes in and talks to me. And I think sometimes I'm just not very good at channeling or very good at picking up information. But what I get is dropping images constantly in my head, or saying, write this down, or seeing myself writing things down, or words popping up. And I'm like, oh, that's telepathic information that I get from my granddaughter all the time.
Yeah.
And say, do you want to go to the park, or do you want to go down to the water? And all of a sudden I feel myself on my paddleboard, and I'm like, oh, you want to go to the water. But she's not going to tell me, but she's going to be able to show me something, and I'm going to feel it energetically.
Yeah.
So telepathic is a good catch. Yeah. And I think the last thing that we want to look at as far as characteristics is that these indigos aren't going to be quite as angry. They aren't going to be quite as aggressive as we were, or as they are about the truth. They're going to need truth to be spoken, but they're not going to go up and punch you, or break down the wall, or kick over a desk and say, you're not talking the truth. They're going to say, so why aren't you telling me the truth? And you're going to go, I just got nailed by a 9-year-old. Yep. I just had a 17-year-old.
2.5 hours, not 3.
Exactly. And you're like, yes. And so our response to that has to be less aggressive and less angry as well, which is, how do we soften ourselves? Because as truths come out, we have to be able to hold them. And our children are holding them better than we are.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's important, this goes back to what Ashley said about being able to make mistakes. When Sadie pointed that out last night, I laughed, and I was like, you're right. It was 2.5 hours. You're right. Because and part of it is because she's just invokes joy no matter what she does. And I think part of it is that importance of letting them know that it's okay to laugh at yourself if you do get off track. Like, we might exaggerate, we might, minimize something, and it's okay to acknowledge that and move on. So I just wanted to share that because I think our reaction is important. There are definitely times where I'm not reacting well. There are times where it's like, oh, like I get it. Like you're, fine, And so we have to remember like which reaction, where are we coming from? Broken indigo, traumatized indigo, or are we coming from a balanced indigo who, is strong in their truth and who they are as a person. So I think it's important we understand that about ourselves too.
Well, and to have a sense of compassion and humor about it. So I want to take that Sadie story one step further, which is, it's one thing to get called out and you go like, yeah, which could be modeling to a child. Whenever you get caught lying, you just laugh and make it funny. Or you can go that next step, which is, sometimes when I'm just really tired, I make the stories really big so that you all feel sorry for me, which they go like, oh my God, you do that a lot. And you're like, yeah, I know. And so then you called your own self out on something that you have to say out loud, and then it stops happening because you realize that it's really actually your truth, which is, sometimes when I'm so tired, I will exaggerate this and make it so big just so y'all feel so sorry for me, right? And then you can laugh because then it's so much fun because you just said the truth, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's like vulnerable, like Brene Brown. You just open your mouth and you go, so this is what I know about the truth, and this is what I don't know about the truth. And maybe you can show me a little bit more because you're teaching all of us.
Yep, exactly.
Ones. So they're going to hold truth. They're just going to hold it with a lot more patience and less anger than we are. And they're unyielding. They never stop. They call you on everything, right?
Yes, it's true.
God. So there's this opportunity, right? So we talked about the first thing is that when we're parenting, when we're parenting and indigo, we have to know what our relationship is with the truth. If we have secrets that we're hiding, if we have shames, like, I'm never going to tell you why the heat's off, and now I'm going to make a campfire in the front room and we're going to pretend like this is a wonderful day. If you don't tell, like, they know this, right? So your relationship with the truth is first and foremost, right? And that as a parent, we have to build an understanding of energy, right? And personal fields, like, man, when I'm over in yours and I'm trying to speak your truth for you, I'm not letting you discover yours. And so personal fields, boundaries, and vortexes around each human have to be seen and understood as being really important. I was at the coffee shop watching two tourists, young, both, I don't even think they were, they looked like they were from another country, yet they spoke impeccable English, and they were negotiating what they were going to do with this Glacier Park tour. Like, I'd really like to go see this and this. What would you like to go see? And then then the partner spoke about what he wanted to go see. And then she said, so may I ask, is there anything you need to do in the morning that you want to finish before we make our plan, so I have a time frame? And I'm just looking at this whole thing going, how did you learn how to do all of that kick-ass communication? And I realized that they have a different relationship with how you explore really important conversations than we do, because we're still learning them. And they're coming from the ground up, which is, how do you negotiate with people and make plans? And so I realized that's understand. May I ask, without prying into what you're going to do tomorrow, but do you have something that you need to do tomorrow so that we can put it into the context of the decision? And I was like, that is so beautifully said, because it honors the boundaries, it honors the vortex, it honors the field, right?
Yeah.
And then there was this part that you and I don't think we even really talked about it before we got on here, but understand the elements, because indigos they're going to gravitate, whether it's their birth sign, whether it's their propensity towards an element, whether it's mental, they like to think about things, whether it's water, that they're going to be energetically reading and reacting all the time. Fire, they're going to make things really big or really small, and they're going to push the momentum along, right? Or earth, which is like I have a little Capricorn granddaughter who, hands down, I don't know what to do. You go outside and you either pour a bucket of water or get a pile of rocks, or you walk in the grass and boom, she's right there. Because anything outside, she doesn't want to watch anything. She doesn't want to read books. She doesn't want to play. She wants to be outside. And you're like, if I know the elements, I know how to bring them into themselves through the element.
Yeah.
So with your, not to put you on the spot, but have you noticed any of that with either any of your stepchildren or even in your relationships? When you know the element, you can sort of watch how they come into their truth, into their own through that element.
Well, yeah, I mean, our middle daughter is a double Pisces. And so, yeah. So that water, you can tell when the water gets imbalanced with a Pisces because of the emotional state, but also like when she's completely balanced in her element. And it's actually very physical too. I mean, if like swimming, she's like a natural swimmer and like very happy and joyful in the water. And, so that's a very physical piece. But yeah, I mean, I can see it because all of the kids, the oldest is an Aquarius, very air, very intellectual, very, very much the air element. So each one is kind of in their own space. The littlest Virgo, so she's got that earth, but she also has a ton of fire energy. So yeah, I could see that with the kids for sure. And how, when those elements are balanced, how they feel. They get out of balance, it's pretty obvious where they're at. So,
well, and to teach them however we can that, like even if we just gave a flat surface of the elements, which is, is there a way that we can create balance today, which is, are all elements up and functioning and working collaboratively, or are they totally leaned where you're doing physical and mental and problem solving something and you've forgotten about these, and how do I model bringing those into balance? Because again, we're the first and foremost thing that our children see is the parents. After that is the extended family. After that is the school, and after that is the activities around school, depending on their exposure as they grow in time or in space, that they have different things that they watch. So how do we pay attention to the elements within inside us, which is when I get really mad, my fire comes out and everything else goes straight downhill, right? And to know what that element is.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me. And then, we got something here from Tony at Chi Moments. Honoring your boundaries and noticing when you're not in the past, that these boundaries, and that was part of understanding yourself, which is the last piece I was going to say, is like when you're in your own energy and you're embodied, it's like, am I standing straight up and am I moving nicely, or am I cattywonk and going like this, and off, and wait, I'm going to have a reaction the second that I'm not embodied constantly.
Yeah.
I think I spent, I was married 16 years. I think I spent 14 of those 16 out of my body, being unable to ground and no boundaries and angry. So I know how much work it takes to sort of go towards these center points that hold truth. And some of us get it faster than others. This is just the recommendation. When you're raising indigo children, you need to know truth. You need to know boundaries. You need to know empowerment, and you need to know embodiment. And that's what they don't know how to do yet. They're going to manage it from you. Yeah. It's pretty interesting. So we're sort of at this 1 hour mark where we were going to talk about indigos and then sort of open it up for Q&A. So now's the time to put something, give us a kid, give us a scenario, give us something that you want us to address here today, because we've got a half an hour set aside to do this if we want to.
Yeah, throw your questions in for sure. And I want to make sure we touch on the mission of the kids, because we almost didn't. Just because I know you talked about it, but I just want to reiterate, like, the mission of Indigo Kids now versus maybe what our mission was as Indigos when we were kids.
So remember that that the Indigo is a gladiator, a warrior, a master from another part of the galaxy that is coming in to hold truth. And even the young ones are going to do that, as well as the work that we did. So their mission is to continue the energetic and physical dismantling. They're going to do the same thing we're doing. They're just now in the second stage. So the example I would use is, let's say in our generation, there was a building that had been boarded up on the neighborhood forever, and it was dangerous, yet the kids had pried some windows off and were going in and out and partying in there. And everybody knew that it was a pretty nasty, dirty place, and there was something wrong with it. In our generation, we would have gone in there and pulled the stuff off and gone through the city council and the approvals and everything and pulled it apart, just to take the fences down, take the windows off, the walls off, and take everything that was dirty off of it, and even maybe take it down to the studs or down to the foundation and leave it. These guys coming after us are going to come in, and they're going to look at the building or the foundation or whatever stage it's left at, and they're going to dig down deep, and they're going to remove the whole thing so that it wasn't even there. They're going to pull the toxins, that may be the leaky septic tank. They're going to pull everything. They're going to replant. They're going to look at and find people who know how to replant it and put it where it is. But that's not their job. They're not the rebuilders. They're just going to go that second level or third level of going cleaner towards purity and truth. I think that's a good example of
yeah, I like that.
Because, I don't know how many times I've seen fields out there with foundations that are just sort of still there and pipes that are cut off, but no more buildings you can go into. And they go well, why would you leave the dirt like that? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so,
it's a great example, even too, with the soil on the planet and what's happening with glyphosate. I love your example, because there's quantum layers to it because of that, because of the cleaning that needs to happen on the planet. And this is the generation that's going to step into those roles as they grow up.
And these indigos still are not the ones who create the new future. They're still dismantling. So let's look at the two of us at our age right now, and the fact that, let's just say we have children between 15 and 9 years old, right? Mm-hmm. And those children are looking at what we see as wow, our politics have fallen apart, our elections didn't work, our social media is being locked down, or this, or this, or this, or this. And we have a list of what we believe are phenomenal changes to anything we've ever known. Mm-hmm. But what we haven't addressed yet as indigos is why. Mm-hmm. We haven't really even touched on the why. For the last 45 years, since 1977, we've been pulling up and showing what's not working, but we haven't started to show the why, or to gently keep pushing at it like the way Sadie did, which was, it's not 3 hours, it's 2.5. So there's going to be this part where we're going to think the truth is actually out, and these young ones are going to go, oh, we haven't even started on the truth yet. And so they're going to keep dismantling it until it gets down to pure soil. So what we're seeing is, my God, it's finally someone's shut down that house, or someone even is going through legislation to try to deal with the problems of it. And these guys are like, no, you don't understand. That thing's been toxic, and we have to go all the way in. And that dismantling is their job. They're still not the builders. So Ashley said something down here. How do you?
Yeah, she's got a question.
How do you support these kids finding confidence in their boredom in the areas of interest, so as to prevent it from having them step out of their interests? Yeah. Okay. So I want to hold on to that one, Ashley, for a minute, because I want to look at the mission. I want to make sure we make 2 more points, and then I want to go over to this one. Okay. So the first mission is that they're going to continue dismantling the physical, energetic, dismantling. The second thing is that they're here to protect the crystal, rainbows, and diamonds. They're here to build a diamond world. So everything's going to keep refining and refining, getting ready for what we call the golden age, the age of Aquarius, the diamond period of time, where our frequencies aren't needed anymore because the diamond just holds purity at all times. They're here to protect that. And they're here to normalize truth, not go after it and say, hey, it's not happening, but to normalize that at every given time, no matter what happens, you hold truth as the highest element of respect for yourself and for the people around you. Then you never have to retract or go heal or go grow, something else. You are always just holding it. So truth becomes the investment in the future because it's normalized and it's about being authentic with yourself.
Yeah.
So those missions are so much deeper and broader than ours. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. Yeah. So Ashley asked, what do you do when they're bored? When you've got a kid with all of these intelligences, all of this truth, and they're in a school, they're in a neighborhood, they're in a family system, they have too much time on their own and nothing, they don't know what to do because they're in between. They don't really have a purpose yet. Or do they? Like, what is the context of the boredom? The boredom is I don't fit in here anymore. And I think most of us have noticed this as adults. You start studying indigos and you start aligning with the truth. You start losing all of the surface friends. You start losing relationships that are out of integrity or that cause trauma. You start losing interests that used to keep you busy all the time. So take that times 10 into school, where you have kids who are required to go to school, kids who are actually bored as all get out because the schools haven't adapted yet. So you make something, the game that I would play, Ashley, is to start building up the metaphysical, the esoteric skills separate from school. And then like the example I use in the book is I have a client who has a list of the Clairs on the refrigerator. And when her kids come home from school, she's like, which ones did you play with today? And what did you see? And what did you notice? And who else noticed it? And the kids will say, hey, me and these two, we figured out instantly. I felt something and I looked and they saw it. And then we started managing in the class. So you give them a focus that's beyond the environment that they're in by building up esoteric skills or interests or something that helps them with that they're dismantling, their ability to decipher through dismantling. And you validate, what you just said was spot on. So you play. So you can collect, in our age, you could collect baseball cards. You could go fix cars. You could, learn how to sew. You could do all this shit that they had us do in the 50s and 60s and 70s. My mother made me crochet, needlepoint, sew, cook. I didn't even know how to change a tire until I was like, Dad, I want to learn what boys know how to do too. And then I was like, well, this is getting interesting now. But you give them something that's outside of school about life. Teach them how to cook, teach them how to make bread, teach them how to do something else that gets their balance going, because school and friends and family aren't going to have the same fascination that they had before. And I hope that answers your question. Meaning, like how to stay away from things that they're adverse to, and to teach them that resonant thing, which is when it lines up with you, it's going to hold, and when it doesn't, step back. And that would be how I would approach anything with the indigo. If it feels in line with you, then step forward. If it doesn't, step back and go, I wonder why it isn't aligning with me.
Yeah. We have another question from She Moments. When asking my 18-year-old a question, she replies, Mom, I already told you that. She said, how do I reply with, well, now I just clicked it off. How do I reply without reacting when she's obviously upset?
Well, okay, so we have an 18-year-old who feels like you're in her space asking her questions that she's already answered. So how can we ask a question to someone who's holding the truth in a different way. Let's say my pattern is that I worry about, and I had, I had a 14-year-old living at home by myself who was really sketchy, and she was hide things, and she was moving in and out all the time for a period of time there. So it's kind of like I would worry about her. So I would keep asking her questions to try to find out what the answer is. And so what I noticed that changed things was when I went and said, I noticed that I'm spending a lot of time worrying about you because I'm not sure if I always understand how you're navigating or how you're making choices. So if I've asked you this question before, let me know. But if not, this is what I would like to know. And when they do that stern thing, you can actually put your hand in front of your heart, not out here like you want to push them away, but up here and go, didn't realize that I'd asked you that question before. I'm going to need to figure out how often I have that question in my head and say it or don't say it, because I guess I'm worried. And so when I'm worried, I ask these questions the same way and I get the same reaction from you. So can we create something different here? Because what we're really looking at is that if we get that reaction from a child who's in a stern voice pushing you away, like they do, they push and they challenge, they're saying, get your shit together, Mom. Stop asking me the same question. And what we have to do is go, how come I have this need to double check or to double check or to double check? So it's two conditioned patterns bumping into each other. All we can do is go, there's the pattern, and what's my role in what's truthfully going on with me? Oh, I think I'm worrying about you a lot more than I thought I was. I think that I ask repetitive questions. Does that make sense, Tony? The hand position is really magical. It's like you protect your heart and you hold it right in front, which is, or you can even put your hand here, which is, just a minute. I noticed that I have been asking that question a lot. And we don't kowtow and back down to the kid. You stand up very straight and you go like, wait a minute, there's no need to be so harsh with me. I'm noticing that maybe I haven't been asking that question a lot more than I thought. So how can we do this differently? And this is old pattern. Basically, it's just old pattern behavior slamming up against each other over and over again, which is all we do when kids are in therapeutic programs, is unwind those repetitive patterns and give us another perspective to come in at them. Oh, good. So chi moments, that helps, because the child's in a pattern and you're in a pattern. When a child's in a pattern, we know that temper tantrum, what is it? Tired, hungry, food, give them some rest or give them some space. You can just go like, well, okay, what I'm getting right now is that this is not a time to discuss. However, it's not going to go away. I'm just going to give you a little space right now, and I'm going to go figure out how I can say that differently for me, or if I even need to ask that question. Yeah. And so then we're putting not therapeutic speak or kowtowing or that codependent, which is, how come you're mad at me? Mm-hmm. Or what did we do when we slapped in together? Because you've got warrior versus warrior. The worst is when you pull out your sword and they pull out their sword, and then you're like, ha, ha, ha. Mm-hmm. And then you're in this power struggle, and you're not going to acquiesce, and the kid's not going to acquiesce. It's hilarious. It's pitted. It's power against power. So indigos are hard to raise. I know I was hard to raise. What about you?
Oh, I'm sure I was not easy. I'm sure my parents would be like, oh boy.
Yeah. Oh, Ashley's got another one. How do you suggest helping kids know when to stop before they use all energy in reaction to something that's undesirable to them? This is the clue that I came up with. I made it really simple. Baby bear, mama bear, papa bear, or small, medium, and large. Wow, you're having a really large reaction to something that I am going to try to figure out what that's about. Oh, it's getting larger. And it's getting larger. So I'm trying to figure out what else might be going on, because this is getting pretty big. And you can even do that in yourself, which is somebody says, hey, Mom, would you just turn? Oh, this is mine. This is the good one. This just happened last week. My daughter shows me a fanny pack that she had. She goes, look at this great fanny pack here. And I just looked at her and I took it and I just dropped it on the ground. And I said, I'm not having this conversation with you. I was in full-blown reaction. Do you have any idea how many years you guys found my fanny pack in my drawer, paraded it around the house, teased me about it, told me it was the stupidest thing they'd ever seen, and my daughter just looked at me and I go, I'm having a huge reaction to something that's probably about this big, aren't I? And she's like, yeah. And you go, okay. Wow, that felt so good though, but bring it back in. And so I use my hands, or I use my words like small, medium, or large, or are you aware that you're having a really big reaction to something and I need to know, is there something else going on? Because I haven't seen you do this before. Or in the case of Ashley, who I know happens to have that a 4-year-old who can just like go big, is like to go, yeah, you're getting really big right now, period. Let's bring it in. Let's bring it in. You can breathe. You can calm it down. You can bring it in. You can bring it in. And you can use your 4-breath model from yoga or the Marines, like breathe it in. Let's take a deep breath. And let's see if we can get the size of this just a little smaller, because I have a hard time hearing you when it's so big. And then you're not yelling at them, you're not shaming them, you're not scolding them, you're not punishing them for having a reaction. You're just saying there's a reaction. And of course you're going to have a big one, but let's find a way to bring it in a little bit. And I'm discovering that now with a 19-month-old who wants to hook her own self into a car seat. And I'm like, this is going to take 4 hours. I don't have 4 hours, and you're going to have a reaction the second I try to hook it. So how are we going to do this? And so I will telepathically talk to her like, we can either do this or we can go down to the river. Which one would you like to do? And then 9 times out of 10, telepathically, she just hands me and I go, great. So now we can do something else besides sit here and fight about this. And I go, thank you so much. And I just acknowledge that what it took for her to grab that and hand it over as opposed to go big. Mm-hmm. Because got that sword out. What else? Anybody else have another question as we bring this into winding it down? These are good questions. And
yeah, I'd love to get into these questions you have at the end of just some things, some coaching questions that I liked while we wait to see if there's any other questions. But, one that jumps out to me, do you experience their intuitive, psychic, empathic, telepathic skills? And I bring that up only because I'm a psychic. And so when I'm with the kids, I not only can notice and experience when they're having experiences, but I've also been able to acknowledge that for them, which I think has been helpful. I have 2 really great examples. One is my stepson. He has a lot of gifts and he has dreams about things. And so he'll, like, one day he told me, I dreamt last night I found my AirPods and they were in the car. So he went out to the car. They were in the car. And he's like, look how that came true. And I was like, that's awesome. And he has those often. And so it's like this validation of his gifts. And he wants to tell me about them because I'm open with mine.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that happened is my middle daughter told me one night, she came out and she said, there's something in my closet. There's something in my closet. There's a person or something's in my closet. And my reaction, being who I am, instead of like, oh, don't be scared, was, well, who do you think it is? That's what I said to her. I said, who do you think it is? She goes, well, I don't know. We went to her room and I said, well, who do you feel here? And we had a little conversation. And so this acknowledgement that there is something else going on and not diminishing the gifts. It's why I am who I am today. My parents were both very open also. And so I share that only because I think a lot of these kids have these gifts, and maybe you haven't been in a position to know what to do. And so I just want to share, I think the most important thing we can do is to keep them open, because there's a small window of kids where you're truly open before the system around us starts to shut those gifts down. And the more that we can teach and validate and affirm their gifts, what they're really experiencing is real, that the dreams are real, that these spiritual experiences are real, that opens up so much more for them. And it teaches them how to, like our oldest, she loves analyzing her dreams, and she has vivid lucid dreams, and so it doesn't allow things then to shut down. And so I think it's really important. So I love that question that you brought up. So I don't know if there's any others I want to point out in here that were important, but that one really stuck out to me.
Well, and by acknowledging our own modeling, like I'm going to ask, I don't know where my keys are. I obviously have to be somewhere in the house because I drove home, and I'm going to use some tools to find out where they are, so we can start to teach kids how to use some of theirs too. And there's these windows, where magic is always happening 2, 3, 4, 5, and then somewhere between 5 and 8, they sort of watch you, and then they start to get around their friends all the time, and they start to think that you're really different, or that maybe that isn't something that they tell very many people unless they have close friends. And then going back to chi moments, like when you have an 18-year-old who you can't really start showing magical skills to all of a sudden because they're kind of like already way on their track. You start to model how you would solve them yourself, keeping in mind that psychic, intuitive, empathic, and telepathic skills are real, and that they matter, and that we need to start normalizing them. That would be the word that I say at all times: normalize them. Oh, look at you. You just figured out how to find your keys with one of those awesome core intuitive skill sets. Wow, look at you. And so you empower and you validate that is at the core of what we build from. Yeah. The other one is that, if you want to identify yourself, am I an indigo? I can't figure it out. I've read the book, there's parts of me that answers it, parts of me that doesn't answer it. Or is my child an indigo? I think that that there's no real right way to know it, because I can't commit. I mean, maybe we can go to a channel, maybe we can go through a galactic astrology chart and find out why you're here. But a lot of us don't go to that extent. So I think the most important thing is to find out what resonates for you. Like if you find yourself leaning in and you're like, everything you're talking about lines up with my child, then start to operate as if they are. You don't restrict anything. You just start offering more intuitive, telepathic skill sets, which would be beautiful anyway. So you go to what resonates with you. You can muscle test, you can check in, you can journal, you can ask your own guides. Tell me about me. Yes, I am. Okay. So then that means that I am going to be a lot like what Denise and Lisa were talking about. And then, oh my goodness, there's my son or my daughter, and that makes more sense to me. So it's how it resonates with you. And there are going to be characteristics that we might have missed that you who pays a lot more attention might pick up on something. So that's where you put in to these comments like, so what if they have really high IQ and the talented and gifted programs are boring to them because they've been running circles around their teachers and they're having a hard time with teachers that can teach them. And you're like, oh yeah, that's one of those things that happens on a rare occasion, but it's definitely what happens when you come in with mastery intact and the human education system doesn't work for you. So then you go like, so what do we do with it? That would be one. The other thing is that in this book, I give like 4 or 5 examples of what happens when we assume that our children don't always follow or track what we're doing, and we're being really, like cagey about it, or we're trying to package a life for them, or we're trying to do something. So there's some really good examples in part 6 of this book on um, on ways that maybe, what happens with dual income parents, and there isn't a lot of time, and evenings are about unpacking lunches, getting some meals together, getting some food, getting homework, and it's too chaotic for the child to figure out how they're supposed to calm their system down. Knowing that that exists, what do you do? And so there's some examples in there that I think really sort of drive it home. And those were examples that came specifically from my coaching that we were working on. So I think that that would help too. And then there's going to be other examples where I missed it, or I missed something. And then you can always share with me, because this is how I learn, is when somebody shows me something else that I haven't had an opportunity to gather yet.
Well, and before we close, let's talk about your coaching, because here we've had this 8-part series. We've talked about all of these different aspects of Indigo. I know Indigo isn't it. I know you're moving now into a new frequency that you're going to be writing about. But I want you to share with people, how can they work with you? What do you have available? How do they connect with you?
Thank you. Thank you. So ultimately, I'm a coach. And I've been doing these deep dive, 6 weeks, once a week dives into things like how are you stabilizing yourself? How are you aware of yourself and what's getting in the way of whether it's traumas, whether it's your system of judgment on yourself, or some blind sides that you have. And then how is that going into your relationship? So I'm doing one-on-one coaching with moms, with dads, with individuals who are younger, who are not parents. So I'm doing a lot of one-on-one coaching, and it seems like I always have this conveyor belt of clients coming along, and then there's 1 or 2 slots. And that person who needs to find me at that time always grabs it and then contacts me, and they fit perfectly in that slot. And that's just how life goes. And so it's been moving like that for the last 10 years really nicely. So if coaching is something that you want, what I've noticed is that it's gone from give me some time every other week or once a month, which I never recommend, but every other week, into the world's changing really fast, and I'm working on skill sets much faster than I thought I would. So let's do weeklies for a while. And that has been straight across the board with all of my clients have shifted into intense weeklies, doing some deep dives, and then coming out and breathing for a little while and going give me a break. And I'm going to come back in a month or 2, and we're going to go after this next one. So it's been kind of fun. The other thing is that I am starting, I'm still promoting and working always with Indigo Assignment, because I think it's the core of the first assigned group that came, and what led to that. The next book is on crystals. And the Indigo wasn't an easy book for me to write, even though I myself am an Indigo. It sort of brought out this tough, warrior side of me. We have to talk about this. Was as I'm approaching the crystal energy, I'm realizing that there's this softening, and there's this water whale vibration and intelligences that are starting to show up. So I'm looking forward to sort of moving Indigo promotions over to a little bit more part-time, and just diving into this water of the crystalline, which is 89 forward in mass. They can be kind of spectrumy. They can be multi-intelligences. They don't adapt well to school, and they're the liberators. They're the ones who didn't just come in like the Indigos and hit the wall and try to bust it down. They started from the inside out, and they started changing every system: family system, school system, sports system, work system. So diving into that, and I've been holding it at bay all summer. No, I'm not ready, but it's ready. I'm ready to go do that. And then the last piece is that I do videos every single Sunday morning on YouTube. And if you haven't clicked or subscribed to those, because of you, Lisa, and because of this show, I've gone from 50 subscribers to 313.
Yay!
And I'm 500, I can even post some things on there on YouTube, but I can't do it yet. So if you haven't done that, please like and subscribe.
Yeah, go subscribe, guys.
So there's always good information on there. And then you can sign up, and I sort of bring everything into a perspective once a month and send out a newsletter. So you can sign up for it there too. So thank you for that. I really
You're welcome. Thank you for all of this. I have so enjoyed the last 8 times we've been together, plus outside of that. And I'm sure there's something coming down the pipeline for us to continue to work together in this way or however. And so thank you for that. And just like Chi Moments said, buy the book. Absolutely. Get Denise's book today. It's available on Amazon. And thank you, Denise, so much for doing this with me. I love you so much. And we're out of time. And this has just been informative as always. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I so love and appreciate you, Lisa. And everybody who's been signing on, thank you.
Absolutely. Love you too. You guys have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.